The next example that I want to look at is this one here, p squared minus p minus 6. Now this one is a bit more difficult because it's got these negative signs which are going to complicate us thinking about what numbers are going to multiply and add to give the various things. Now let's break it up. Remember, I look at the constant term. In this case it's a negative 6. And remember, I'm looking for two things that multiply to give that negative 6. And I look at the coefficient of the x. Now remember, there is a 1 here that we just don't write in. So the coefficient here is negative 1. So we're looking for two numbers that add to give negative 1. Now once negatives are involved, some students have trouble working out what the numbers are going to be. Something you can think about is these signs and what hints they give you. If two numbers multiply to give a negative, that tells us something about the signs on those numbers. We know that a positive times a positive is a positive, and that a negative times a negative equals a positive. If the two signs are different, then the result is negative. So if I have a positive times a negative, I get a negative. Or if I get a negative times a positive, then I'll also get a negative. Now, if the result of this multiplication is negative, so it's one of these here, tells us that the two numbers have to have different signs. One of them has to be positive, one of them has to be negative. So I'm looking for a positive and a negative number. And I can see here that when I add the positive and the negative number together, I have to get a negative answer. So that tells me that the value of the negative number has to be bigger than the value of the positive number. Okay, that kind of makes sense, because if I had, negative 5 plus 2, that's going to be negative 3. If the 5 was the positive one and the 2 was negative, that's going to be positive 3. So because the result is negative, the larger valued number has to be the negative one. So armed with that knowledge that I need a positive and a negative number and that the negative one has to be bigger, I'm going to start thinking about what numbers I can divide 6 by. Okay, 6 has only a couple of options. 6 and 1 multiplied together will give me 6, and 2 and 3 multiplied together will give me 6. I'm going to think about how I allocate my signs here. Okay, I have to put a negative sign in front of one of these pairs, and if I think about the fact that the result when I add them together has to be negative 1, we can pretty quickly see that negative 3 and 2, when they're added together, will give me negative 1, and negative 3 times 2 will give me negative 6. So in fact, that's going to be my factorized form. And I'm going to put it down here to indicate that, yeah, you can do this straight away with a monic quadratic trinomial, sorry. So my two numbers are going to be 2 and negative 3. So I can actually just straight away write this as p plus 2, p minus 3. And that would be the factorized form. Alternatively, if we're not confident with that, we can put the intermediate steps in. We rewrite negative p as 2p minus 3p. I need to put that plus sign in there. Negative 6. Okay. Then we group in pairs. Common factor of this one is p outside of p plus 2. Common factor of this one is negative 3, p plus 2. And I'll just give myself a little bit more space here. Factorizing that out, I've got a common factor of p plus 2 in each term. So I can pull that p plus 2 out the front, and I'm left with p minus 3, which is what we got by just sticking those numbers straight in the bracket. I do want you to understand, though, what is happening on these steps, because that's going to be important in our next video, where we're going to look at the non-monic polynomials. That is, quadratic trinomials where the number here is not just a 1, but a 2 or a 3 or some value other than 1.